That's some brand new no doubt for you right there. As a lot of long-time members of the league know, they've always been one of my favorite bands. And the theme this week is looking hot, because I think that the Buddy Bear Big Timers are looking hot after a midweek trade this week to strengthen what is already a powerful squad. But first, I just want to explain the NBA headband. This is in protest of the NFL. Now, I realize that they have the regular refs back now, but that doesn't give the Packers their win back. That was an absolute travesty, and if they end up losing playoff seeding or something like that because of that game, it's going to cost Green Bay millions of dollars in the economy, like the newspaper said, and the league had the authority to overturn the game. It's in the Constitution, the bylaws of the league, that Roger Goodell has the authority to overturn that last call, and granted it would have created havoc in Seattle, but it was the right thing to do. And it's an absolute joke that he sits there and denies that wasn't an obvious interception, saying, well, they should have called pass interference, but they can't review that. So for this week, I'm back in the NBA, and on a side note, the Bucks are better than expected 19 on ESPN's power rankings for the first week of the preseason.
And that would sound about right to me if there were 19 teams in the NBA, but I think they're going to be terrible once again. Same time, it's interesting also to know that you're going to be doing NBA fantasy basketball and starting a league for these 12 guys as well.
No, I tried the fantasy basketball once. It's too much to keep up because there's like games every other day.
Yeah,
I don't have enough time for that, going to school and working full time.
I would draft Meta World Peace first overall.
Yeah, I would draft that big dude that they got from the Rockets, Samuel DeLambert.
I think Gelhar would draft George Mirasan.
Yeah, he's retired now, though.
He'd still draft him, probably.
But hey, the Bucks got Samuel DeLambert, and so they're going to be a force.
All right, well, one of the news, with that Packer game, there were a bunch of controversial calls, a bunch of things that they had to review, and a huge result in the game was the Jennings touchdown that was overturned. That was the difference between your 3-point pick of Smithson.
I would have been 2 for 2 in my big predictions. And I picked 3 points. You're going to lose by 3. And you ended up winning by 3 because that touchdown got overturned when it would have been exactly right what I had predicted.
But it was the right call.
Yeah, that was one of the few calls I did get right. He was short of the goal line.
And what was kind of stinky is this was the third straight week where my second running back put up next to nothing, got hurt, got knocked out of the game. So I did the sensible thing and shipped him out. And I traded away the big trade of the week.
Yeah, but first I got to say, I know I got the win, but you can't be too proud of 97 points to get the victory.
It was one of those cases, again, where second running back didn't put anything out. I picked the wrong flex receiver. Again, every time I picked my flex receiver, he's been the lowest scoring receiver on my team.
But I took one of them off your hands.
Yep.
So, pretty pumped about that, actually.
And overall, Smithson, again, kind of the story that we've said at the beginning of the year, seems like he's team mediocre. There seems to be nothing on his team where it's like, oh, he's altogether terrible. But just seems to be nothing where it's like, oh, this guy's going to kill you.
Yeah, he doesn't have anybody like that you worry about on a week-to-week basis. Like, he has decent players, some of them, but they're all guys that you would want as your 4th or 5th starter out of your 9 starters. He doesn't really have that guy that carries his team. Romo could be that. But Romo has been, and I can tell you right now, I have Jason Witten and I have Des Bryant, and they've been struggling.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will turn around, and Romo has the potential to carry a team. AP when he's healthy, but he's still kind of feeling his way back in a little bit.
And he had the Niners,
Yeah, and Peterson is another guy that can carry your team, too, when he gets rolling. And he did look very good in the first week, obviously. Yeah. But otherwise, Jennings just looks like he's really fighting through injuries. Vernon Davis doesn't get utilized as much as his talent would demand because of the offense he's in.
Crabtree's kind of a not-so-great starter.
Yeah, and then Deshaun Jackson's
kind of a not-so-great
especially
starter.
in PPR, and I said from the get-go that he should have drafted Macklin from day one.
He actually got a good game at Turner, but... Yeah, so, again, I feel like he's team mediocre. I don't think he'll stay winless the whole year, though. I think he'll get better as the season goes on. Then, your nephew took it on the chin.
Yeah, that and actually, I hate to rant about my own family, but I gotta give Owen the boneheaded move of the week. It's kind of an unofficial award we have. We always think of a boneheaded start because there's inevitably going to be one any given week. And Owen was asleep at the wheel, and it cost him a win. Granted, it would have been a moot point if Kelly would have started Jamal Charles against our advice, By the way, we apologize for that, Kelly. I'm pretty sure that you started Reggie Bush on the basis of our advice. What happened is that we forgot he was against the Saints, and the Saints aren't a very good defense this year.
Yeah.
But so you ended up with justifiable starts, and you had Jamal Charles on the bench for 42 points. That would have been a nice use of last year's $100 of waiver bucks.
Well, who could have known though that Charles would eventually get the actual duties as a primary back like they kind of thought he would. I mean,
well, it's one of those guys. I don't even think it's gonna be like that every week. It's just a matter of he got hot, and when he gets hot, you just keep feeding it to him.
Yeah.
But it's still hard. He spent $100 in waiver bucks last year, and what does it go towards? Having a 42-point player on your bench.
Yeah.
But that's not the boneheaded move of the week, only because we're too prideful to admit that ourselves when we suggested that. However, Owen had lost by 20 points, 121 to 101, and it's entirely accounted for by his foolish start at the defense spot. Now, he has the Patriots defense, which are a matchup-based defense. They can get turnovers and things like that. But they were against one of the best defenses in the league on the road.
Best offenses, yeah.
Or best offense, I'm sorry. Yeah, one of the best offenses in the league on the road with Baltimore. And he had the Bears defense, one of the better defenses in the league, against the pathetic Rams.
Yeah, any team that Sam Bradford's the quarterback of, is not going to do anything offensively.
Yeah, and the Bears have been, if nothing else, solid. They dominated the Colts. They gave the Packers all they could handle defensively. They get the Rams at home compared to the Patriots on the road, and he would have scored 23 from that defense instead of -2. That's a 25-point swing. He lost by 20 points.
That's boneheaded.
Yeah, that boneheaded move of the week. And so Kelly, you pretty much gave Kelly a win on the platter. You've got to start looking at maybe starting Tony Gonzalez on and off as a flex, too, because he's been awesome. He's the #1 scoring tight end. I don't think that's going to keep up like that.
What about Roethlisberger, too?
Yeah, and Roethlisberger's got, it's hard to sit Cam because of last year, but right now I think Roethlisberger is the more consistent option.
Yeah, he's struggling, turning it over, not completing a good percentage of his passes.
Yeah, and Roethlisberger's 37 points on a nearly 400-point game. Yeah. Granted, it's against one of the worst pass defenses in the league in Oakland, but still. He's been solid and he's got weapons, so
you got to have an arm to do that.
But there's an upside. He's got some depth there now, but yeah, that was a bad call to start the Patriots D instead of the Bears.
Oh, there was some family pride on my side this week. Even though you gave him pretty much no chance to win, little brother Matty beat Dream Crusher. That was a pretty convincing win too. He really cleaned house on pretty much all of his matchups.
Brought him to the woodshed.
He didn't really leave much on the bench too. I mean, there was technically an upgrade or two that could have been made, but overall, 141 points. You can't do much better than that. That was it was a whooping.
Yeah, the only place he could have improved was Fred Davis instead of Antonio Gates, but that wasn't a wise move going into the week.
Yeah, I mean, technically Julian Edelman scored more than Colston, but nobody makes that move.
Yeah, but Colston's banged up now, I guess. But we didn't know that at the time. And props to Torrey Smith. I mean, as you know, I'm the one that initially picked him up last year, but was it a trade or did I cut him? I don't remember. I think you cut him because Matt grabbed a bunch of guys right at the end. Yeah, I think I cut Torrey Smith and then Matt picked him up, and he's really emerging. I've been saying this since last year. He reminds me of the career arc of Mike Wallace.
And you remember that was a gutsy game. That was a big game for him.
His brother died that morning, and he goes off for 2 touchdowns, including what essentially led to being the winning touchdown.
Yeah.
And 32 points from Torrey Smith. That was huge. You got a good game from Ray Rice. Peyton Manning is doing it ugly right now. He might be one of those guys that you get against. Houston's got a really good defense, but he was 26 of 52, and he might not be able to be counted on in some of the tougher matchups, I don't think.
Yeah, well, you can't underestimate the value of a quarterback who's playing from behind and has a couple good long-range receivers. I mean, he could be one of those guys, again, that is bad when it comes towards his team winning, but good when it comes to fantasy points.
Yeah, and what really surprised me about Dream Crusher is that he only managed 95, and I'd like to say, who was ripping on the Buddy Bears big timers for not breaking 100? Yeah. I think he was ripping on the big timers, saying they're not really ready for the big time when they can't even score 100. And he goes and scores only 95. What's more concerning for him is my team had 3 or 4 eggs laid. He didn't have anybody that had a terrible game. It just was didn't have anybody with a great game.
Yeah, only 1 passing touchdown, only 1 receiving touchdown.
Yeah, but 20, 10, 10, 10, 16, 10, 11.
Yeah.
That's the epitome of mediocre. He didn't get much from his kicker defense, but those are more erratic on a week-to-week basis. He might have found a gem in Joe Flacco, though, and as we'll talk about in the week's previews, he's off to a good start with him against me this week because he did sit Stafford due to the injury. But overall, it was just an old-fashioned butt-kicking. I didn't think it was going to happen, but 141-95, that was like the most lopsided victory of the week.
And it did make a difference in the game, but it was kind of weird that you would go and grab the Cardinals' defense.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing. We were talking about that. It's like, why would you take the Cardinals' defense on a Sunday morning pickup? Usually Sunday morning pickups are reserved for you need to start someone that day.
Yeah.
It could have been the savvy move of the week. You know, even if you wouldn't have won, we would have said, wow, he really saw that Cardinals D potential. But then you sit him on your bench and start the Eagles, who the Cardinals were playing. And because of that move, you have 2 points from your defense from the Philly, and you would have had 24 from the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And what's the point of picking them up if you're going to leave them on the bench?
And you never know. At the end of the year, 22 points can come back to bite you.
Yeah, and you don't. I mean, nobody picks backup defenses to start Sunday morning on week 3. So it just was a head scratcher because why would you make such a move if you weren't planning to start him?
Now, he'd been waiting for a win. Craig finally got it.
Yeah, that's a big win for Craig. He's actually, if I go to the front page here just for a second, I think he's one of the higher scoring teams in the league. He is the highest scoring team. No, that's points allowed. He is tied for the highest scoring team in the league.
Yeah.
So, I've been saying Craig's team's a juggernaut. The problem is he gets a hole here or there. He's still, Doug Martin's been shaky, probably because of Josh Martin's incompetence right now, or Josh Freeman rather. I'm sorry. But he's really struggles at that. The tight end position might have been patched with the Martellus Bennett, who's been pretty studly for 3 weeks now. But then he loses Nick's to injury and has to start, crummy Brandon Gibson. Yeah. And just like we thought, 3 points. Yeah. It didn't affect him this week, but I think that he did it again. He's going to have 2-3 players that are under 10, and then some that go off. This week he was more moderated. He didn't really have too many huge games, but he didn't have too many stinkers either.
Yeah, he's scoring the 130s to 140 range on average, and Craig's averaging 130 or so a game almost.
Yeah, and he's
gonna win games.
And he's had a very difficult schedule. He had Messi Madrid, who was undefeated going into that game. He played myself and Dream Crusher.
Yeah, so he has the most points against.
Yeah, he's played 3 of the best teams in the league, so he's just been kind of a victim of bad luck. But I think as the year goes on, he's really going to even out, and he's going. I personally think that he's the biggest threat in my division. I'm very impressed with his overall roster. I mean, whenever you have Tom Brady on the bench and you're trying to trade him, that's a pretty good roster.
Yeah.
I think that Craig's Achilles heel is the utter lack of depth behind Stephen Ridley and Tom Brady, though.
Yeah.
He doesn't have really any depth behind at wide receiver or tight end if there's an injury, and that's a problem with him because he gets so many injuries.
Yeah.
But I personally am, Martellus Bennett was one of my big fantasy draft sleepers, and
up on him.
I cut him before the season started just because I needed the space. In retrospect, I would have kept him over either of my tight ends.
Yeah, no, that's
so that could be a season saver for Craig as far as having that tight end there.
That's what he needs. And you look on Greg's side, and you have to think, if somebody would have told you that Michael Vick was really, really laying an egg so far on fantasy season, you would have said, well,
he actually had 20 and 27 the first 2 games. He's been looking bad doing it.
Yeah, and then lots of turnovers though. I mean, 6 turnovers already in 3 games.
Yeah.
Not to mention
no more than that.
fumbles.
That's 9. 3.
Oh yeah,
9 turnovers.
6 picks.
9 turnovers.
Yeah, 6 picks, 3 fumbles.
Yeah.
3 turnovers a game. He's leaving a lot of points on the bench or on the grounds. You have to think, how long are they going to be able to tolerate the kind of play they're getting out of Vic?
And there's talk already they're threatening to bench him.
Yeah. And
so he's getting still last week aside, he's still putting up decent fantasy numbers.
Yeah.
But he's been a miserable real-life quarterback, and the reason that affects you in fantasy is because they're not going to let him play.
You think maybe having Jay Cutler on his fantasy roster is just souring the mood of his players?
Yeah, I mean, and Jay's probably just griping on the bench and doesn't like being sat, and he only managed 8th against the Rams.
Yeah.
I'm thinking at this point, I mean, he's got a lot of talent there, but you might have to start thinking of even cutting him pretty soon.
Yeah. Nope. So all in all, Greg's got a couple things to look at, but who really had the toughest week out of all of them was the upset of the week.
I called it.
Which you called.
You didn't think it was going to happen. I called it.
I didn't think there was any way that Nick could score low enough to have less points than anyone in the league.
Yeah, that was a miserable performance by Picket Fence Cartel.
I mean, that was brutal. I mean, that's one of those kind of games where you kind of expected, like, the Reverend to have last year when he started 3 players on bye or something.
Yeah.
79 points is brutal.
Yeah, -2 from the Ravens defense, but, I mean, you don't really start teams against New England very often. And he had a bench spot. You know, he had an open bench spot, so he could have picked up any defense other than Baltimore for that week. I mean, you don't cut Baltimore, but you usually don't start people against New England.
Yeah, I mean, he could have grabbed the Cardinals.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that would have given him enough to win the game, just about, not quite maybe. They had, what, 25 points?
25.
So 27-point swing, he lost by, it would have been a tie.
Yeah.
So he would have tied if he would have grabbed the Cardinals D and started them instead.
You know, and nothing Romy did looked incredibly great.
AJ Green went off.
Again, yeah, AJ Green, that is his man-child there. Eli had an okay game. You know, 18's fine from your quarterback.
You actually want more than 20 because all the top quarterbacks were 25 to 29 last year.
Yeah.
You really want more than 8.
16 out of the tight end was good. You know, so he had a couple spots that produced. But usually 106 isn't going to win you games in this league. Not very often.
You're going to win probably 40% of the time when you do that. The average score is usually around 110.
Yeah, so
I mean, you're just a little bit below average. You'll probably win 3 or 4 times out of 10 when you do that.
So when somebody scores 79 against you, you're going to win most of the time.
The reason, and I'm going to back it up what I said before, the reason I was predicting that upset successfully, might I add, is because, 1, Rome's team, while not very good, is too good to go winless. And 2, the matchups just lined up. I even said Nick probably beats him 7 or 8 times out of 10, but the matchups were too good for John Rome's team with the Polk High Panthers, and they were too difficult on Nick's side.
Yeah,
so,
you know, Nelson against the Seahawks, Frank Gore against the Vikings.
The Vikings #1 run defensive league right now.
Yeah, there's Steve Smith against the Giants. There was a lot of matchups that were going to be
Houston
tough ones.
right here with Demarius.
Yeah, so tough luck for Nick. Jordy Nelson's not been so great for him this year. Doesn't justify the keeper spot that Nick kept him in.
Yeah, and they all say touchdowns you can't really count on them. And 15 touchdowns last year hasn't even had a sniff at the end zone this year.
Yeah, I mean he's averaging 4 catches a game.
Yeah, he's been a big disappointment the rest of the Packers offense so far. But again, they've played three probably the best 5 defenses in football, maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But the one thing that Nick's got to really be irked by as well as Chris Johnson's continued incompetence. He's benched like he should be, and he's still not doing diddly squat. The only difference is this time he's not even getting the catches.
And just think how much stronger his team would have been had he traded out of that spot like he had considered.
Yeah,
going down.
The thing is, in theory, it wouldn't have been that. I mean, it seemed like he was doing the right thing to set up his team to land Gore and Chris Johnson.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chris Johnson has just been a turd.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry for the language, but he's a turd.
Plop.
Yeah, Plop, just like the Office guy. The guy from the TV show The Office. There's a guy they nicknamed Plop because yeah. But anyway, but if you would have told me that the Tennessee Titans would score 44 points and Chris Johnson would only have 24 yards rushing and 1 catch for 5 yards.
Yeah.
That's
24 yards rushing on less than 2 yards a carry.
Yeah. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And I think that, you can't cut Chris Johnson, but you kind of just have to leave him on your bench until he gets his act together.
Kind of like, you know what? If I was the coach there, Javon Ringer.
Yeah.
Bring in somebody that can do something. And, so, okay.
The
Nick scored 79. That was the lowest points of the week. And we thought somebody would probably score less than him because we call him bye week. But Franz would have had a win if he played Nick.
Yep. And it was a bye week for me. I was actually a little bit nervous because Griffin went off for 27 and Fitzgerald 28, and they were both in the early games. And he had 20 from Kyle Rudolph, too. I'm like, I could be in trouble here.
Mm-hmm.
But, so instead of having 2 good scores, he had 3 good scores this week.
Yeah.
But, so that's an improvement. However, he got 1 point out of his running backs combined.
Well, okay, but now there's more trouble there.
Yeah, Beanie Wells is on IR, and then -3 from the defense against Tennessee. You didn't see that covered with the Lions defense.
So hang on. Beanie Wells is on the IR?
Roy Hoo's on the IR.
Robert Turbin doesn't really play.
Nope. And
Rashard Mendenhall will maybe start playing soon, but he's going to be on bye.
You don't have any running backs. You have no running backs. None. And, you could put Kyle Rudolph, that was a good pick. In retrospect, I mean, he really hit a home run with that pick. he's going to be one of the best 5'10" tight ends in football. It looks like Griffin the third, if he doesn't kill himself because he's getting hit a lot right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, just in terms of talent, he's been able to make some of us eat crow, even though he still should have drafted him in the second round. But he's producing like the pick. And then Fitzgerald obviously is Fitzgerald, even though he goes up and down with his quarterback issues. But I mean, the rest of his team's terrible, and you can't be going into. It's like going into a gunfight with a baseball bat.
Well, and we talked to another owner in the middle of before we made the show today. Matthew Drzwicki called us, and he pointed out against the league this year, Rams has 2 wins total. Only 2 people have scored lower in any given week than France.
Yeah, and that, not to explain, that means that in 3 weeks, if you played every single team every week,
like it was a Royal Rumble.
Yeah, you'd be playing 11 games a week, 33 games. You'd be 2-31.
Worst team ever.
Yeah, it's really the worst team. I mean, I'll be surprised if he breaks 100 at any game this year.
Do you think he'll be winless?
He'll probably squeeze out 1 just because he would have beat Nick this week.
Yeah, he would have beat Nick this week. Maybe when he plays Rome, he might upset Rome.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that he needs help desperately at running back. You need to, he's got how many? I'm going to look at his team real quick here, see how many waiver bucks he has.
There's nobody out there though.
No, but somebody might emerge later in the year. He's got 110 waiver bucks. So really, if you get anybody that's a feasible running back, you got to overpay.
You know what's funny though? Do you know what he did this week? When he tried to grab Nate Burleson, who was on waivers, he put up there Greg Little to cut. The only player on his team that was locked that he couldn't cut for Nate Burleson is the only one that he used. So not only does he not know how to draft a team, he doesn't really know how to play the game.
Yeah, I mean, you can't cut cut somebody that was already active for the week until the waivers clear.
Holding up Thor's hammer for a long time really did a number on his brain.
Yeah, I'm going to get the DVD this weekend, and I want to see if he's in the credits. That'd be pretty awesome. But we'll check out the deleted scenes too. A little plug to Gelhard. He's been a miserable team this year, but he was an extra in the movie The Avengers as Thor's stand-in.
And I want to mention too, this show has been brought to you by sponsors from Dickies.
I love Dickies. That place is awesome.
Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, but
and my sister's sewing, which my sister Michelle made this hat for me. I just figured if you would bring up random advertisements, that I could do that as well.
I'm not advertising anything other than that he's in the Avengers, and he held up Thor's hammer, and he's a mechanic as an extra too.
Smithson, if you see all these CDs and video games behind us, buy them all.
Yeah, but and the one thing, we actually ran really long in this segment, but I was just going to briefly talk about my team, where my 121 wasn't great, it wasn't terrible. I had a really good game from Mike Wallace, who's been better than I expected this year. Darren McFadden rebounded nicely. Des Bryant wasn't terrible. Aaron Rodgers got to get out of that funk, and I think this is the week he does it. I think he blows up on New Orleans this week. However, my 15, you gave up a little too early on Mikel Lashore, and so I decided to throw out a speculative $15 waiver pickup the week before everybody else told him to do it. We're always ahead of the game here, 1 week ahead. But I had a good feeling about him. The coaches were hinting that he was going to get used a lot, and sure enough, he, in his first NFL start ever, 100 yards and a touchdown for 25 points, and when he passed 4 catches and 34 yards too. I was able to parlay that into my bye week material. As you might have seen on the front page, I traded Mikel Lashore, and then as kind of throw-ins, D'Angelo Williams and Michael Floyd, and I landed Malcolm Floyd and Ahmad Bradshaw and Willis McGahee. And as Drew and Matt Drzwicki might be painfully aware, this week I didn't really have a flex receiver, so Malcolm Floyd fills in a major hole for this week's game. And then next week, McFadden and DeMarco Murray were both on bye the same week. And so Matt's probably licking his chops.
And Lashore.
And Lashore was on bye too, exactly. That's one of the reasons I felt urgency, because I had nobody to start other than D'Angelo Williams against the Seahawks, who are a really good running defense. But because of this trade, I'm just, please, Ahmad Bradshaw, get your workload back. I'm hoping that he at least gets 10, 15 carries still. But if he and McGahee are both able to go next week, he really saved me from having to throw up some waiver wire scraps. And
I already had it with these guys. These bums hurt all the time. Don't want them. Don't care. I'd rather get LaShore back and just ride her out.
No, but there's a lot of potential, but you already are looking at some trouble where he's hurt his groin after his one and only game in the NFL, and he's got an injured groin.
I'll tell you what, if that doesn't go well, I'll take a sledgehammer and injure your groin.
Well, there's been some debate in the league with Matt Jazwicki and Kelly Snyder, and Nick privately off the record razzing you. It seems like there's some people that are outraged about the deal, but I think with Matt, it's a case of realizing that now he has 2 running backs to face. Granted, it's not the same as facing McFadden and Murray.
I mean, I guess I'd ask historically, have Matt, Kelly, or Nick really generally ever favored that good of teams? Not really. I mean, Nick pulled off out of his butt last year. He pulled off a second place finish on the strength of Tim Tebow for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you can throw rocks, but you know what? If you live in a glass house, it's probably a bad idea.
Yeah. It is kind of like the peanut gallery, if you will. But I personally thought it was a great trade that balanced everything. Like, I really badly needed 2 running backs I could start and a wide receiver I could start for my bye weeks. And you needed that.
I needed a guy that had a potential to be a week in, week out starter.
Yeah, as opposed to playing the matchups and things like that. So, I mean, your running back 2 has been kind of a carousel so far.
And they're all getting hurt. So
yeah.
Odds are LaShore will get hurt too now.
Yeah, well, he is hurt.
Yep.
So, at least Bradshaw and McGahee are both probable this week. I don't need him this week, though. I need him next week. And so I'm really hoping that Andre Brown didn't Wally Pipp Bradshaw and that they keep using him. And it looks like they will, but, you know, it's talk right now. Let's see if it gets back up with action.
I'm kind of pulling for Andre Brown because then my deal looks a lot better.
Yeah, they'll look better, but I think Malcolm Floyd's going to be huge. Like, he had 100 yards in, 6 of 7 games to end last year, and then this year he was a consistent performer, even though he hasn't had a big game yet. So I'm excited about Malcolm Floyd as my bye week fill-in at wideout, and I might even platoon him with Dez Bryant depending on matchups. You know, that's
and then Dez hasn't been that great so far. Kind of a
he looks great when he catches the ball, but he's not. But nobody in the Cowboys has been getting the ball. That's the problem. Nobody in the Cowboys has been busy.
Well, you know, this show went way later than our normal ones. But have to say, in the next show we're just gonna whip through it.
We covered so much of it already. It's gonna be like a 5-minute show. But when we come back from the break, we'll just discuss 5 minutes for next week, and we'll get you back on your merry ways.
That's creepy. Great.